Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Giant part, obviously, of the Saints win was Alvin Kamara. He was awesome. He was so vocal this week leading up to the game against the Raiders, even guaranteeing that they were going to whoop their expletive. Talked about what it meant to Dennis Allen, the fact that he coached the Raiders. DA acknowledged he downplayed it, but it mattered a lot to him, his former team. After the game, of course, Kamara was phenomenal. A 3-touchdown day for AK. After not getting into the end zone all year, 3 in one day. What a way to break the seal. Dennis Allen on the leadership Alvin Kamara provided.
Well, I think he's really important, and I think that leadership has grown this season, and I think he understands that when you really look offensively and some of the younger skill guys that we have, I just think that veteran leadership presence is important, and it's important to have that in your best players. And so I thought that was good to see him step up this week. And you know what? He didn't just step up in his words, he stepped up in his actions, and I think that's what a real leader does.
He was awesome. So it begs the question, if you're the Saints, why then would you trade Alvin Kamara? The short answer is you wouldn't. But Twitter was a Twitter this weekend because of several reports. So let's jump into them, and I'd like to discuss each of them. The first came from Dov Kleeman, a guy who I still don't know who he is. Muse, do you know who Dov Kleeman is? I think we've talked about this before.
We have, and I actually still don't know either, Matt.
His Twitter bio just says, I cover the NFL and keep people updated about transactions. Yeah. He's got a verified account. He's got 93,000 followers.
He's like freelance? I don't know. Yeah. I don't
know. Dov Kleeman tweeted, the Saints will consider trading franchise running back Alvin Kamara to the Eagles. He meant to say, if they offered to give them back their first-round pick, the one the Saints had traded to Philadelphia, this past spring. An NFL general manager tells at Albert Breer. Okay, couple of things. First of all, I always tell you consider the source. An NFL general manager tells Albert Breer. Okay. If that NFL general manager is anyone other than Mickey Loomis or Howie Roseman from the Eagles, as I tweeted, that report ain't worth a velvet painting of a whale and a dolphin getting it on. Because why would any other GM in the NFL be leaking information about what the Saints might be willing to trade for Alvin Kamara? In particular, the Eagles' compensation. Essentially, you, if you're Mickey Loomis, would be a moron not to consider that if someone's going to give you what could potentially be a top 10 pick. And if you're Howie Roseman, you should be fired immediately if you would trade a potential top 10 pick for Alvin Kamara. Again, it's not just Kamara. Kamara's a very good player. Please don't misunderstand me. I love Alvin Kamara. But Alvin Kamara's contract next year is more than $16 million, and in 2024, it's over $27 million. On top of that, the Saints would carry an enormous dead cap hit if Kamara wasn't on the roster. So financially, it makes no sense whatsoever for the Saints to trade Alvin Kamara because of his contract. And similarly, it would make no sense at all for Philadelphia to give a potential top 10 pick to New Orleans for a running back who has an accelerating contract as he approaches 30 years old, and to give up that, to take on that contract for a player who has not played a full season since his first year in the league, has missed games every year except his first year in the league, it would make no sense at all for Philadelphia to do that deal. So, Dov Kleeman, you can kick rocks because that's the worst part of Twitter and people with verified accounts who think they have news and are trying to spread something as news. That's like saying, you know what that's like? That's like saying, if you were to give me $500, I'd consider giving you $100. Who wouldn't do that? It's common sense. But why would you give me $500 if I'm going to give you $100? Nobody would. It's stupid. That's one. Now, the more relevant report is this one, which came from Jay Glazer on the Fox NFL Sunday show yesterday when he was going through his reports. Here you go.
About the Bills. Listen, trade deadline's coming up here. The Bills, are they in it for somebody else? They are trying to make a splash. They're already in it there for Christian McCaffrey. But what people don't know is they actually called about Alvin Kamara this week from the Saints. They were rebuffed there. But look, there's still other running backs out on the market. Kareem Hunt, Jeff.
So Jay Glazer says the Bills called the Saints about Kamara and were rebuffed. Now, Jay Glazer is certainly credible. I don't think anyone is going to argue to the contrary. He's one of the best when it comes to reporting on the NFL, and I have no doubt at all that if Jay Glazer is reporting that the New Orleans Saints or that Buffalo called the Saints about Kamara, they would listen. And if you're the Bills and you are all in to win a championship this year, then part of that makes sense. And you would also think of it like this. If you were New Orleans or if you're Buffalo and you're planning on being a Super Bowl team, your first-round pick this year would be a late first-round pick, right? I mean, somewhere in the 30s, like high 20s or 30s if you make it to the Super Bowl. But again, when we look at Kamara's contract, this is the drawback and going to be the drawback not only for teams trading for Alvin, but also for potentially the Saints if they were to get a deal done. Next year, Kamara's cap hit is $16 million. His dead cap number for the Saints is $19.3 million, meaning if Kamara's on the Saints roster next year, he'll count $16 million against the cap. If he's not on the roster, he counts $19.3 million against the cap. It would cost you more not to have Kamara on your roster next year than to have him. If you look at 2024, the dead number drops to $9.2 million, but his cap hit is $16.8. So someone would have to be willing to pay Alvin Kamara $16 million in 23, $16.8 million in 24, and $27 million in 2025 when he would be a 30-year-old running back. It just financially doesn't make sense unless there's a team with a very healthy salary cap that is playing for the right now. They're saying 2025, be damned, we'll figure that out in 4 years when we get, or 3 years when we get there. We're trying to win right now. And the Buffalo Bills qualify as that, but what are they willing to give up? Apparently, he never got that far, and I don't blame Mickey Loomis for it because the Saints would still have an enormous cap hit to deal with, in particular in 2023, if Kamara wasn't back. So you would have to get an enormous, incredible offer, and it doesn't seem like suitors are banging down the door. The Saints here at the trade deadline, I'm sure would love to recoup some draft capital, but you have to be realistic as to what assets are coveted and tradable. Marquez Callaway, you might be able to get a late-round pick for Marquez Callaway. I mean, you got a sixth-round pick for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, y'all. And I get it. He's a guy in a contract year, so, trading him to Philly. Philly had no guarantees that he would re-sign, so there is that part of it. But at the same time, man, you got a 6 for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. What would you get for Marquez Callaway? What would you get for Nick Vanette? Like, do you want to turn around and try to trade other guys on rookie contracts like Cesar Ruiz or like Marcus Davenport? Maybe, but what are you going to get for those guys? That's the legit question that the Saints have to ask and weigh right now. And the odds are not much. I mean, the Saints probably aren't going to be buyers or sellers here at the trade deadline. They're probably going to stand pat. If something comes to them and they have an opportunity to improve their team, certainly you look at it, you always take the call, you have the conversation. It just doesn't seem like the Saints are going to be in a spot to really be active at this trade deadline. I would love to see them work some type of magic to be able to improve either this team or the franchise in the future. It just doesn't seem like they're in a position with a ton of chips on the table to be able to negotiate for much of anything. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.